After over 3 months of tweaks, shrieks, and biting our cheeks, we can finally talk our imperfect imp, the ghastly girls, and speedy scout of the Walter, Wendy, and Wortox Skilltree update, everybody. So let's get to it. And we start with a Pine Tree Pioneer that is more prepared than ever before, even beyond his skills to come mind, as here's the poop. By default, Walter now boasts wobbly command wheels with toggleable actions to come, map icons for our good girl if we happen to leave her behind, an ability to call her back to our side no matter how far we are from one another, a wobbly hunger meter, the opportunity to feed our beast while atop her back at any time, a built-in insulation for Walter while he rides Wobby in the battle that is quite effective as you can see, the chance to open Wobby's storage while out and about at will, and finally, a buff to sanity gains from stories the bigger the audience is. But I digress, so let us talk the skills to pay the bills, beginning with how Shattering Rounds will give us access to both Stinger and Moon class variants, both of which deal an area of effect damage on top of their initial hits. Stinger pellets will deal 25 to 1, but 17 to those close by, while Moon class rounds will up both to 51 and 34 respectively. Utility rounds follow suit and give us honey and shock scrap rounds that do not do similar things this time around, as honey rounds will temporarily slow what they hit for roughly 7 seconds and do not stack, whereas shock scrap rounds are just electric ones, so expect 42 damage by default or 74 if the target is wet. And lastly, lucky rounds, which lead to gunpowder and dreadstone pellets as you can see, and both of which are going to come with a gamble. The former will deal 59 damage to one target, but has a chance to explode further, dealing 119 to multiple hostiles instead, while the latter has a chance to not break upon impact whatsoever. And of course, as we move on throughout the day here, always remember that the shadow stuff deals more damage to lunar mobs and vice versa, especially when affinities are in play. Because as we continue here, we are already into some affinity territory, as Shadow Slinger is going to bring pure horror and Ichor rounds into the fold, and we'll want to pay attention to the latter for sure, as these Ichor rounds can indeed stack, last way longer than honey rounds in general, and are stupid effective overall, whereas the former is just okay in their damage over time nonsense there, as we do see more tick damage with the Void Cowl in play, however they're still just kinda weak overall. So onto the Lunar Slinger we go, with its Bright Shade and Pure Brilliance rounds in comparison, to find that the former deals 68 damage to most non-player enemies directly, followed by their spawned tentacles slapping stuff for 85 whopping damage, and the Pure Brilliance leading to a planar debuff on whatever they hit that will grant anyone with a planar having weapon 5 more planar per hit, so enjoy them all. And if you want more of them, just select Ammo Smith to turn 20 rounds per craft into 30. And if all the ammo is getting out of hand, the ammo pouches here to offer 6 portable slots for the price of 1 as you can see, so fire away. But perhaps not before we talk all about Walter's newest slingshot customization that brings bands to increase the range, frames for unique attacks and special ammo capacities, and grips to increase fire rates. Did you get that? Good, because breaking down every single one of these attachments would be mind-numbing today, so just note how the default grip is already speeding things up, and how a frame may provide more space for more rounds, as we need to carry that basic breakdown into advanced grips here that gives us 3 more attachments itself, all of which can lead to even more pellets flying fast. Plus, the Glamour one actually prevents wetness from taking Walter's slingshot away from his hands. But Advanced Bands is next, and comes with but 1 craft that will help increase the range of the slingshot one last time, while also speeding up the projectiles in the air themselves. And lastly, Advanced Frames actually starts to mean something a little more, as this scrappy slingshot frame here will allow for Walter to use a special attack that can potentially deal double the damage of any pellet, all the while being able to be upgraded to allow for quote-unquote unlimited ammo capacity in a single slingshot. But finally, the Thule Sight frame gives Walter another special that fires the top ammo before he returns to shooting the default ones below, so take advantage of that if you wish. As for our sanities alone here, we need to fire through the scouting skills, starting with Twine Twirler, that allows for an always available, more efficient, and faster rope crafting mechanic for Walter alone. Pioneer's Panache turns every Pine Tree Pioneer hat into one with 35% wetness protection over 20, 120 insulation over 60, and further halves the sanity loss from damage taken to 0.5. Special treats are here, here that are refined from monster jerky, never spoil, and raise Wabi's hunger by 28.2 every bite. Field Medic not only introduced a new healing craft in the Flutter Strip there, a recipe that will heal most for 24 health and 10 sanity, but it also increases the efficiency of all healing items by 50% for Walter specifically. Campfire Enthusiast here gives Walter a portable campfire, which isn't too much to write home about. However, the skill also further enhances sanity gains from all campfire stories, so there's that. Let's Rack and Roll gives Wabi a portable drying rack. And finally, Wabi here, Wabi there allows for Walter to mark an area or a specific player even, only to have the opportunity to send Wabi to said person/place where she will unload her loot and then return to Walter a few minutes later. Oh yes, it's a thing, as are Wabi skills specifically, like Endurance here, which gives her a 20% speed boost, or Roaming Retriever that sees Wabi being able to collect loot for us as we run about the constant. Furry Forager is somewhat similar, only this is going to allow Wabi to dig up an additional cactus flesh, banana, lichen, berry, glowberry, mushroom, and carrot as we do the action ourselves. Hard-Headed follow suit, and we'll see Wabi chop in mine with us at the cost of an increased hunger drain over time. Scruffy Sprinter and Dashing Doggy grant Wabi the ability to sprint faster than most beefalo after 3 seconds of riding without delay, but also an ability to dash away, as you can see. And finally, Shadow Wabi's Affinity grants us literal teleportation dashes at the cost of 3 hunger each use, whereas Lunar Wabi will not lose additional hunger from sprinting/dashing, but only in lunar-based situations mind, while also gaining her sprint immediately following a dash of any kind. So scout the scout yourself and earn your badges, everyone, as we're somehow only a third of the way done, everyone. It's Wendy's turn. Slightly annoying Ouija board effect on her skill tree selection menu, and all. Thankfully though, she isn't as number heavy as Walter, as Pip Spook Quest 1 there just decreases the distance between Pip Spook toys by a significant margin, as you can see. Pip Spook Quest 2 just adds 1 to 2 more toys per Pip Spook Quest, and Pip Spook Quest 3 simply leaves the 2 Morning Glories per 1 toy, while the final toy after a quest is going to drop 6 over the original 4. To continue though, the Picnic Casket skill adds a literal picnic casket that offers 9 slots for all of Wendy's elixirs and Morning Glories while on the go. Ghastly Experience grants Wendy her first fresh elixir in, well, the Ghastly Elixir there that will instantly raise Abigail to level 3 no matter where or when. Strong Brew makes every elixir except Spectral Cure-All last for 2 days instead of 1. Extra Yield gives Wendy a 40% chance to craft 2 elixirs per recipe, followed by an additional 10% roll for a potential third. Blessed Cistern 1 reduces the spoilage rate of petals within an urn by an additional 50% overall. This skill's second level will not only reduce Wendy's sanity drain from quote-unquote scary things by another 25%, but will also extend that to other players nearby as well. And lastly, Blessed Cistern 3 makes it to where if Loon Blossoms are placed inside the cistern instead of petals, Abigail will take player damage from mobs over the usual mob-on-mob damage. This will come at the cost of half the healing efficiency of healing elixirs while she is summoned, however. Well, let us press on to Morning Glory 1 here that allows for Wendy to craft both butterfly and moon moths with the appropriate ingredients there. Morning Glory 2 adds the Wraith Reese head item that comes with some sanity regeneration, the ability to neutralize ghosts for all other characters who wear it, but also ultimately leads to Wendy being able to drink her own elixirs at the cost of lesser effects overall. The healing potions will both last for 20 seconds, with Spectral Cure-All dropping to 5 health per second over 20. Nightshade Nostrum grants night vision for almost a full day. Ghastly Experience removes 25% of the maximum health penalty, while also restoring 5 sanity and 12.5 hunger per slurp. Unyielding Drought and Distilled Vengeance grant Wendy a shield that recharges every 10 seconds over the course of their 2-minute life cycle, with the latter reflecting 20 damage back at what hits us, of course. And finally, Vigor Mortis offsets up to 25% of a potential slowdown of an equipped item, while also never slowing us down on webbing or honey trails. Zoom zoom. And if you die anyway, Wendy now has Morning Glory 3 that adds the Perennial Altar that is essentially just a meat effigy that anyone, yes, anyone can attune to in order to revive yourself at will. But before you do so, you might want to check out the Vengeful Ghost skill here that temporarily turns all dead players into a ghost that can deal time-based damage to anything nearby for 15 seconds. And yes, even damage modifiers like Wakefrids or Wolfgangs will come into play too. To continue, however, we have grave beautification that leads to 3 flower petals being able to turn graves into big spook spawning stations that are capped at 4 at a time, are quite weak, but will still attack stuff for us, all the while the graves themselves will be seen producing evil flowers every 3-ish days as well. Furthermore, this skill makes it to where Wendy gains 5 sanity when picking evil flowers over losing it. But then comes Gravestones by Wendy that introduces both spirit vessels and headstones in their crafting menu that both serve to relocate graves in their own unique way. The former literally relocates any grave you choose at will, while the latter creates fresh mounds of dead dirt over any skeletal remains that you happen to find out there in the world. So have fun with that, while also getting familiar with yet another command wheel, as Abigail is going to be able to do all sorts of things, like escape danger at the click of a button, haunt what we want her to haunt, dash into battle at locations of our choosing, and even scare mobs for several seconds to buy time or control the crowd a wee bit. But alas, it's time to truly shine with Abigail's affinities, even if this first one simply adds 15 planar damage to our girl. But Lunar Sisterhood 2 is where things truly begin, with the introduction of Lumina's Wrath here, which will add 10 planar attack to Abigail for about 2 minutes. But if we want to make the most of it all, Lunar Sisterhood 3 not only allows for Abigail to transform into Gestalt Abigail during waxing/full moons, but ups the ante on Luminous Wrath itself to propel that planar buff to 100 per hit, as you can see, leading to a potential 385 damage per attack under the proper conditions. Oh yes, very strong, especially compared to Shadow Sisterhood that starts the exact same way with the planar nonsense and only leads to an increase in Abigail's Vex multiplier with Sisterhood 2 over a straight Abigail buff. Typically, Abigail's Vex grants a 10% bonus to anyone hitting a Vex mob, with Wendy's getting even more. But with Cursed Vexation elixirs here, that rises to about 25% by default, so all this swings towards group play over just Wendy and Abby kicking names and taking butts. As even our last kill with Wendy simply turns our Ghastly Girl into her Shadow variant for 8 seconds per murder, in which she will deal 25 planar damage on top of her usual multipliers, which is not that spectacular. So you decide how you want things to die, as our Impatient Imp has waited long enough, and his scales are ready to tip to either direction as he decides to be naughty or nice. Here's the deal. If more nice skills are selected, Wortox is no longer considered a monster, and releasing souls will restore 5 sanity while eating them drains it by 10. But if more naughty skills are active, Wortox will heal for 25% less soul himself, will suffer no sanity loss when munching them down, and can temporarily overload on maximum souls for roughly 7 seconds before a typical soul explosion. But as for the nice skills themselves, we begin with Lightbringer 1 that gives Wortox the twin-tailed heart recipe, which in turn can revive players for 10 souls at the cost of 25% maximum health penalties for the revived. That is, unless we have the Lightbringer 2, of course. To continue though, Reaching Souls 1 and 2 are quite similar in that each rank of the skill will help to increase the range at which a soul can heal someone, and while you might not notice it immediately, I promise you, just watch this footage closely and you'll be able to see just how ridiculous the range is nowadays. But just last night, Clay also went and did one final change here to both Reaching Souls 2 and Soul Bastion 2, to where souls now no longer move towards us faster, they move towards the most hurt player the fastest. It's interesting, and I can't say it's been worth the multi-month wait to see more Wortox changes, but it is what it is. Lifted Spirit follows in the spirit of that by granting Wortox a 20% speed boost over the course of the 5-second Soul Echo cooldown following a Soul Hop that is increased to roughly 7 seconds through Lifted Spirits 2 there. Reverberation is essentially just a free Soul Hop per soul, as it just gives a second Soul Echo per soul, and Capricious Movement turns a map hop that would cost 6 souls into one that costs 5, but that is only because we haven't actually explored yet. In short, the more map we have revealed, the less souls needed to hop via said map. Which reminds me of some default tweaks about soul hopping that we needn't forget. Wortox can now soul hop with heavy things at the cost of no soul echo overall, and can even do so via the map at the cost of extra souls overall, as one could guess. But Soul Bastion 1 enters the fray and leads to a second soul release per 1 soul dropped that heals for an additional 10 health after 4 seconds, all the while dropping to 2 seconds with Soul Bastion 2 that also looks to heal groups more efficiently. And to make this simple, here's me without the skill healing everyone here for 14 health per 1 soul, compared to the 17 per soul and then some with the soul bashing perks at play. But finally, Lifebringer 3 not only allows for Wortox to squeeze his own hearts to release souls instantly, a process that will weaken with quote-unquote rotten hearts mind, but quite literally allows for any other player to instantly teleport to the Wortox that made that heart if and when they squeeze one instead. And if you think that's neat, just wait until you hear all about these 3 neutral skills that are totally not worthless at all, as they attempt to give Wortox a free play of a pamphlet every 7 to 9 minutes, create 6 souls per use while restoring 5 sanity as well, and rendering anything put to sleep by Wortox's pamphlets harmless for 5 seconds following their wake-up call. Yes, amazing. So let us move on to Knapsacker before our minds melt, as we need to talk to Sack itself, that nab stuff at the click of a button, and deals more damage with the more we carry within our inventories, at least for now. And also, as of last night, the knapsack is a bug net now. It's pretty good. I mean, it's not that expensive, and it's an early bug net considering once you have the skill, you have it forever. Soul jars follow suit though, and aren't inexpensive for what they do. However, being able to lock away 40 souls in 1 slot ain't nothing. Just bear in mind that 1 soul will leak from a jar every 30 seconds if left on the ground. But as we continue here, our overflowing greed will up our maximum amount of held souls by 5 every single time we add a soul jar to our inventories, whereas Covetous Collector brings it all together to make it to where more souls means more damage for the likes of the knapsack, soul decoys, and even souls themselves. Just note that it will all be capped at 100 souls at the end of the day. Before we get to that though, Soul Thief 1 and 2 makes souls last longer when not collected right away, has them be attracted to us from further away, and even has them drop from mobs who are further away from Wortox in general. But Soul Pierce 1 and 2 on the other hand couldn't be more different, as here's where that soul damage I alluded to comes into play. By default, souls will deal 25.5 damage and will sit at 31 come maximum souls. And as for the soul decoy nonsense here, we can expect to distract enemies for 2 to 5 seconds depending on how many skills we have, all the while dealing a base 51 AoE to those near a destroyed decoy that climbs to over 63 damage via Covetous Collector, of course. Just note that quote-unquote soulless mobs don't give a crap, and that bosses have a resistance to soul damage types nowadays. But to wrap it all up comes his affinities that both make swinging the scales easier, as you can see. But as for the Shadow Harvester skill itself, we can anticipate dealing double damage to a single target per soul echo, and an AoE to multiple hostiles with a literal Shadow Harvester in hand, while the Lunar Swindler affinity simply turns any soul echo into a shield as long as we are wearing at least 1 piece of Bright Shine armor or helmets. Got it? Good. As there you have everyone, not only the long-awaited, but also long-winded Walter, Wendy, and Wortox Skilltree updates. Make your notes and expect individual breakdowns to come, as this was a lot. But thanks for watching, folks. Well wishes to all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.